Over the years, I've accumulated quite a few cameras that I use now to shoot my motorcycle videos. If you ever wondered what cameras I use and what kind of images I get out of them, this is the video for you. What's up, my biker friends, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to talk about gear, camera gear, lots of camera gear, and I'm going to introduce every single camera to you, show you a few sample clips of what I usually do with the videos to get an idea of how I use the camera. Guys, make sure you wait until the end because I've got a really cool surprise for you. The latest piece of equipment that I've got, I'm really excited about. Unfortunately, I haven't had the chance to use it yet, but I still show it off to you and I can show you some test footage that I did just before my crash. So let's start with the first camera that I ever purchased, and that's the Sony FDR-X3000 that's mounted on my helmet here. It's the helmet camera, but it wasn't just the helmet camera initially. I used this camera also on the bike, so I mounted it to different mounting points on the bike. This for a long time was the only action camera that I actually had and I was actually using. I spray painted it black because I didn't really like the white on the black helmet. And I've added throughout the years the ND filter. So there's a special adapter. I will leave a link in the description. That's a custom part someone makes off of eBay. So you can actually attach a 37mm ND filter on the camera. Now I did a full video on this helmet and the camera and the GoPros that I use on the bike. So I'm going to keep it really brief. I'm going to show you a few images, what I usually record nowadays. The camera sits on the helmet all the time. It makes it so much easier if I don't have to take the camera off and put it in different mounting points. I have other cameras that I can do that with. And one of the reasons why I got other cameras is so the Sony can remain on the helmet. It's so much easier than taking it off. Now I bought this camera in late 2016. So when this camera came out, it was the first camera that had any kind of decent image stabilization and a 4K image. It would produce 4K and 30 frames per second. And at the time, I think GoPro was on their Hero 5. And they didn't really figure out image stabilization out yet. Now they're pretty good, but back in 2016 they weren't. Now other features that I now appreciate on the camera that I didn't really look for when I bought it at first is actually the 3.5mm microphone jack that goes in here. So I have now two microphones going into the camera. One microphone goes into the helmet and records speech, and the other microphone goes to the back pocket, second microphone, and that records the soundtrack of the motorcycle. Other things that I really appreciate is that it's really easy to get to the battery compartment. It's just a small click and then you can just open up the little latch here. I can change batteries out when I still have the helmet on my head if it has to go really quick. Really like that. Now the very first camera I was using in addition to an action camera was actually the camera that I had with me all the time. I used my phone. I mean, this is not the phone that I used back in the days. This is a newer version of an iPhone, but I had an iPhone at the time. And the phone is actually a pretty good video recorder. If you have nothing else, this is the thing you have with you all the time. If you want to supplement the footage that you get from your helmet camera, first thing that you can do is just use your iPhone or your smartphone. So for the earlier videos that I did, a lot of the additional footage came from a smartphone. Also used the phone to edit my earlier videos with it, which is really cool. I had this little app on here that would just then take all the images from the helmet camera and the phone, and I could make my first videos with it. So the whole Lake Garda and Central Alps, that was created entirely on the phone with helmet camera video from the Sony, and the rest of the video came straight from the smartphone. Then in the summer of 2018, to visit the United States, I bought my first DJI drone. Now, I still have a drone, I still have a DJI drone. This actually is now the latest model. This is the DJI Mavic Air 2. I bought the Mavic Air 1, so the first version of this, and then between I had the Mavic Zoom 2. I still have the Mavic Zoom 2, I just don't use it anymore. So this camera is super, super tiny. It's just slightly bigger than the original Mavic Air was. The reason I got this particular drone over the Zoom 2 is because of the 4K and 60 frames per second. I always like to have higher frame rates. That kind of helps me sort of slow down the images when I want to. 60 frames per second, if you slow it down to 30 frames per second, gives you a slight slow motion effect, which is kind of cool to have. That was one of the main reasons to get it. Also, it's a bit smaller than my Zoom 2. That's why I got this particular one. Unfortunately though, if you look at the remote control, that remote control is really big. I really preferred the old remote control that came with the Mavic Air. that came with the Zoom 2, but I guess it holds a lot of battery power, so there's something to it. You don't have to charge that remote control a lot. Now, the great thing about having a drone is getting aerial footage. So you can, obviously bring the drone up in the air and you can get a really good view of the places that you travel to. And you would think nowadays, by seeing so many aerial shots and drone shots, that would get old. But for me, I still find it fascinating to see these landscapes from all above. And it gives you a really good sense of place, especially when I'm recording motorcycle videos. If it's just a helmet perspective, it's really hard to capture what the place really looks like. You experience it very differently when you ride a motorcycle, but that small little camera on the helmet doesn't really do it justice. So having drone footage to actually show off the places that I travel to is amazing. Now, it takes a bit of a learning curve to fly a drone, but these drones are really easy to maneuver nowadays, and you can just out of the box probably start to get really good images. And because of the great footage that I can get with this drone is always with me when I'm traveling. It takes some time to pull over to the roadside and try to capture images from the sky, but it's usually worth it, and it really makes the videos a whole lot better. Now, I've also tried using this drone in tracking mode. Now, DJI has always sold this drone that it can track objects. And yes, it does that to some degree, but it's really cumbersome. I mean, there's a lot of times when this drone starts to lose you and you have to stop. Also, you can't really go very fast. So when you see drone footage where I'm on there where other motorcyclists actually track themselves, there's a lot of work that goes into it, and there's a lot of fails that happen before you actually get some decent images in there. So you can do it, but you have to bring a lot of time in order to get some of those shots. So there's a good workaround when I'm traveling by myself and you still want to have some video footage where there are motorcyclists on there. If you're in an area that's quite popular with other motorcyclists, I usually film other motorcyclists and just work the footage into the clips, and it still sells the idea that motorcycles are riding a certain road. So for the Stelvio video that I did where Dominic and I were just going up the hill, I actually got out in the morning from the hotel and I did all my drone flying before we actually got on the motorcycles. So I had about an hour and a half head start to get some of the great shots of the road itself. Also, I had 2 other motorcycle riders that I was following the road up, and then I just used that footage and cut it in between the footage that I recorded with my helmet camera. So it kind of sells the idea that, 2 motorcyclists are riding up the Stelvio Pass. So that's a good workaround if you can't really film yourself. Now, the next thing that I got is actually this little guy here. This is the Osmo Pocket, the very first version of that. And you see it's pretty banged up. I use it quite a bit. Actually, if you take the protector off, you can see there's a lot of scratches on here. On the gimbal. It still works really well. I also used it during the enduro action training, and there's a lot of sand and that kind of gets in there and scratches the paint off. But then you just take compressed air, blow out the sort of sand particles, and it's good to go. It still works really strong. Oh, if you wonder about the little furry things on here, these are sort of the latest additions that I put on there, little miniature dead cats. So when you record any kind of sound outside, the wind noise is really a problem with these small cameras. Any of these, the Osmo, any of the GoPro cameras, the wind really distorts the audio signal. So if you put these little dead cats on, it helps a little bit. So if you're in a pickle, you can start recording some kind of audio with the cameras. But I didn't get it for the audio, I actually got it for the gimbal. So the idea that DJI had back at the day, it was really fascinating. I mean, they had these gimbals already. They already had these tiny, tiny cameras and these gimbals that they put on the drones. And someone had the great idea to put it on a stick, put a miniature display on it, and call it the Osmo Pocket. The reason why I got this camera is because I was still filming a lot with my phone at the time. And the phone, most modern smartphones, they take really good video. But the problem is you still get quite a bit of shake in there. It's a very light device, and they have some image stabilization nowadays, but still pretty shaky footage. So now I had all this stabilized footage from a helmet camera and I had the drone footage, and all the footage that I had in between was shaky. So having this little tool here really helped of getting a camera in there that would actually have a very good image stabilization. It just looks so much better when you do that. Also, something that I really appreciate is that this device records in 4K and 60 frames per second. I think that's amazing. And a lot of cameras, a lot of the compact APS-C full frame cameras, it's really difficult to get these with higher frame rates nowadays. I'm still waiting for a GoPro camera that can do 120 frames per second, something that does really nice slow motion. Anything in 4K with higher frame rates than 60 frames per second would be much desired, but this thing is relatively old. So when it came out, 60 frames per second was pretty good. I also like the image quality that comes out of the DJI. It's definitely better than most smartphones, so you can definitely tell when I use the Osmo versus the telephone that the image quality is quite a bit better using this thing here, but considering the size is quite amazing. Also, the Osmo Pocket is really small, like the name suggests, the Osmo Pocket. I have it in my riding jacket. I can bring it along even on the Enduro Action Team tours where there's a lot of sand and dust and some water. I can put this in the pocket and I don't have to worry about carrying it along. Anything bigger than that would be really difficult to bring along. This thing just goes into my jacket pocket. I can pull it out and record some video on the spot. So the best camera is always the camera that you can take with you. And this makes this camera the go-to camera for anything that needs to be small, compact, that I have in any situation when I'm riding or when I'm off the bike. I also tried mounting this camera to the motorcycle to see if I could just mount it and get sort of really stabilized images of the motorcycle. That didn't really work so well. I tried this out and yeah, there's no way you can mount this decently on a motorcycle. The gimbal does not work with those high frequency vibrations. Also, the camera angle is too narrow to really record anything in decent, but I tried it. I was in Spain at some time and I tried it out, and that's not something that the camera is made for. Which brings me to the next camera that I also first tried out when I was in Spain, and that's actually the GoPro. This is a GoPro Hero 7. It's still the 7 model that I use. Now I know GoPro has the Hero 9 out at the moment, and I think the Hero 10 is rumored to be announced anytime this year. Still like the Hero 7s because they're still very small. I don't really need a front display that the newer models provide. I just need something small and compact. So the Hero was actually the camera that I bought from my brother, and I took it to my Spain trip. I had 2 days in Spain where I rented a BMW R1250 GS that was still relatively new at the time. So that was in early 2019 when the BMW R1250 GS just came out. So I was really curious to ride it. Also had 2 extra days. I was already in Madrid for business and I added 2 more days to travel the regions north of Madrid. And I had this GoPro with me for the very first time to see what I could do with a GoPro camera. So the whole point of having another action camera, being able to leave the Sony camera on the helmet and have another B camera that I could then just install in different locations on the bike to get different angles from when I'm riding. This is basically what they use the camera for. The main use, of course, to see it on the bike is when I use this thing here. Also have that in the other video. That's basically a flex arm and it sits in front of the bike and the camera goes in here. But also this camera is really good to mount anywhere on the bike, to record footage on the bike, record other riders. I sometimes take this camera and I mount it on the cycles that are riding right in front of me. I usually ask him if I can mount the camera so I can get video footage for me following another motorcycle. So it's pretty good video footage you get out of it. So the versatility of the GoPro is really nice and it's small and compact, relatively robust. The image quality has gotten really good on those GoPros. I really like the image that comes out of it considering how small it is. Also like the really wide angle of view that the GoPros provide as compared to other action cameras. For example, the DJI Osmo Action that doesn't have such a wide view, and on a motorcycle, wider is better because it just captures more of the image. Now you can see here just with the Sony camera, I'm using ND filters. I'm using ND filters on all my cameras, on the drone, on my helmet camera, also on the GoPro Hero. These are all ND8 filters. ND filter on the drone is a variable filter. So I have ND filters for all the cameras with the exception of the Osmo Pocket. I love the images that come out of these small GoPro cameras. That's really great, but it's not all sunshine. There's a few things that are really annoy me with the GoPro cameras. One of the things that really gets me is the freezing images that I get. Somehow the video footage stops and the audio keeps recording. That's really annoying. Also, it drains batteries really quickly. Sometimes you can just put a battery in, you don't even turn it on, and somehow the battery is empty within half a day. Not sure why that is. That never happens on my Sony camera. The other thing that really annoys me, somehow I don't understand why I don't get that straight, is it doesn't save the date or time. Now with the Sony camera, I can have it sit there for months at a time, pop a new battery in, and it remembers the date and the time. For these things here, you leave it without a battery for less than a day and it will forget the date and the time. So you always have to set it if that's important to you. Kind of annoying with these. So, and of course, there's one more camera, and that's the one I'm filming with at the moment. This is the Sony ZV-1. This is a small compact camera with a 1-inch sensor. It's got a lot of the things that you need if you want to record videos like this. Now, there are bigger and better models. I thought about them too, but looking at all the equipment that I already carry, I'm looking at almost 6 kilograms of just camera gear, and that's not including spare batteries, chargers, and all those additional accessories like tripods that you need to bring. So I was really looking for a small package, and the Sony ZV-1 at the moment is the camera for me. It's got the flippy screen, it's got a nice built-in microphone if I can't use any other microphones with it. There's a lot of features in there that actually help to vlog or record videos like this, and it's in a very, very tiny package with decent image quality. So that leaves me to my very last piece of equipment that I got that I was really excited about. I'm going to show to you what it is actually. And that's this little thing here. This is the Skydio 2 drone. Now you can't buy this drone in Europe. It's only sold in the United States, unfortunately. It comes with a battery. It's got this little magnet, attaches the battery to it. This cannot replace a DJI drone, and that's not what I got it for. There's only one thing that this drone is really, really good at, and that's tracking shots. And I said earlier that it was always an issue with DJI drones to get proper tracking, that the setup takes a long time, that you have to accelerate very slow, and then it loses you. This drone is absolutely amazing at that. It tracks you really well. It is probably the best autonomous drone at the moment on the market. So it's got all these cameras on here just to see where it is in the space. It's got 3 4K cameras on the upside, and it has 3 4K cameras that are on the underside of the drone. And all these cameras do is basically tell the drone where it actually is in space, and then it has really smart AI in there that helps it to navigate sort of in its environment. And you've seen any videos of that. It's absolutely mind-blowing how well this drone flies, and it avoids obstacles quite a bit. And because it avoids obstacles, it can freely fly and you don't have to maneuver the drone. That's one of the prerequisites if you want to do proper tracking shots and not worry about your drone. This drone will do a really good job doing that. Now, there are limits to how well it flies. If you have really small branches and thin wires, that can still confuse the drone like this here, but in many, many scenarios, it will just absolutely outperform anything else that's on the market when it comes to autonomous flying in obstacle avoidance. Now, the reason why that is important is because if you're doing tracking shots and the camera flies by itself, you don't want to worry about your drone hitting any objects. Now, the DJI drones, they have sensors to the side. I mean, if you look at the DJI drone, they do come with some kind of radar sensors in the front and in the back, and they have some at the bottom. They're not nearly as sophisticated as what Skydio have done with their drone. Now, this drone can fly more than 50 kilometers an hour autonomously without actually hitting anything. So when this thing is in the air, it can actually track you. And so how does this drone do tracking? Well, it does tracking very similar to the DJI drone. It uses its 7th camera. It's also a 4K camera, records at 60 frames per second. Beautiful image quality coming out of it, but it tracks you through the main camera. So it sees you, it sees an object in there. Now, the thing where it differentiates from all the other drones that are on the market is when the object's in the way and the camera loses you, then the tracking is done. And that happens more than enough with the DJI drones. Now, Skydio, they have actually come out with another little nifty device, which they call the beacon. Now, this thing looks like a remote control, but it's a GPS beacon. So if you couple that little GPS beacon with the drone, it will send the GPS, your location data to the drone. So in case the drone loses you, it still knows where you are because it has your GPS signal. So it will try to find you again and follow you and see if it can lock onto your image again. And this drone does a really good job in doing that. The reason why I got it is because there's certain video shots that you can get with a DJI drone that you can't with any other drone. Even if you have a second pilot, there's sometimes difficult shots to get. Now, a DJI drone can probably track you or follow you, and maybe follow you in, a 3/4 position, you maybe from the side, and that's sort of where it ends. Now, this drone can actually fly right in front of you and fly backwards in full speed, almost 50 kilometers an hour, I think just over 50 kilometers an hour backwards, and actually film you right from the front. That's absolutely amazing. Get images of that. Of course, you can angle it a little bit, so you can set a different angle of where it's supposed to film you. So you can get really nice images. And then of course you can set it, how far away it is, how high it is, and then what angle to the motorcycle rider the image will be recorded. And it's all really simple because all you need is that little beacon here, that little remote control, or your smartphone in order to do that. So that makes for a lot faster setup time when you actually set up the drone in the air. You just turn it on, You have to couple the device. That takes a few minutes to do that. But once you're there, you just hand start the drone and it will actually then turn around, see you and start tracking you and recording right away. So now all you have to do is hop on your motorcycle and you can start going really quickly and that drone will keep up with you. Absolutely amazing. I was really thrilled to use it this season. Hopefully I will have a chance to actually do some motorcycle videos with this drone here because it cost me a fortune to get it to Germany. So just the shipping cost and the customs is crazy. So if you ever want to buy a drone like this, wait until you're in the US the next time to get one of these if you're coming from anywhere outside the US. Alrighty guys, this concludes the video. Maybe it was a good insight to see what kind of equipment I'm using. Now you don't need all the stuff. You see, I started building up that equipment. I'm just kind of an enthusiast. I love doing that, enjoy recording it, enjoy getting the footage and having better and more material to work with when I edit these videos. So little insight into my gear bag. If you have comments, leave them in the comment section. If you like what you saw, give me a thumbs up. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, ride safe and stay awesome.